All right, we're going to call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order on July 10th, 2019. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
Alderman Laws.
Here.
Alderman Kelly's here. Alderman Clee.
Here.
Alderman Karen.
Here.
Alderman Harry Gathright.
Present.
And Chair Mayor Dumches.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. First item is public comment. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to speak to the committee? Well, please come forward and give your name and address to the microphone, and then proceed.
Thank you.
But you have a communication that you'd like to, so Brandon is going to get that and pass it around. Yeah, he's going to pass it around.
Those are yours. I just have the one. I'm going to ask that those be entered onto the record if I could.
Yes. So we will accept those when we get to communications.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Is there enough for everyone?
no, it's just for Shoshana, I think.
I'm sorry.
Please.
I realized that I had to bring a copy for everyone.
Well,
Two of the submissions have already been provided to all of the aldermen, two of my letters. The only thing I don't have an extra copy of is my statement that I'm going to read.
Now,
Thank you.
just before you begin, just introduce yourself by name and address.
I will, sir. Thank you. Members of the committee, Mr. Chairman, thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Gary Brown. I live at 8 Monson Road in Nashua. I've lived there with my wife Nancy since 1991. I'm semi-retired after being a lawyer for almost 30 years. I've already provided the aldermen generally with two letters. One was dated May 17th, 2019, and the second dated July 9th, 2019. The first one went to all the aldermen, the second one just went to the members of this committee. And I would like to enter those onto the record along with this written statement. We've had cats living with us for almost all of the time we've resided in Nashua. In September 2017, one of our neighbors used a live trap to trap one of our cats. The neighbor claimed that our cat was harassing a cat living with the neighbor. It may be that the neighbor thought our cat was feral. We were informed that a high-ranking officer of the Nashua Police Department advised our neighbor to obtain the live trap from the Humane Society of Greater Nashua. Our neighbor called the police department's animal control officer after catching our cat in the live trap. The ACO took possession of my cat, that is, he seized the cat, transported the cat to the Humane Society, and impounded her there pursuant to a form which was entitled Nashua Municipal Impoundment Claim Form for Police, or ACO. That document is attached to my letter dated May 17th. A box is checked on the form indicating that the cat was impounded as a stray and/or for running at large. Based on these facts, it is and has always been my position that my cat was impounded by the city and the ACO on the basis that she was a stray or because she was running at large. The ACO and the Humane Society do God's work, in my opinion, by caring for animals. But the ACO's and the city's actions must be consistent with the authority provided the city by law, as well as with public pronouncements made by the city with respect to animal control issues. I feel that there were and are a number of significant issues associated with the manner and circumstances under which my cat was impounded, including on the basis of her being a stray or running at large. First, please be aware of the information on the police's website covering frequently asked questions regarding animal control, and the copy of that, the page that I printed down from the website is attached to my July 9 letter. I printed that letter out on July 9, so the information is current. It's the information that is currently available to the public in Nashua, and it was the same information that was there in September of 2017 when my cat was impounded. As you can see, or as you will see, the web page expressly provides that cats are not subject to a leash law. The web page further provides that cats are not required to be licensed. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, the web page provides expressly that there is no law prohibiting cats from running at large. If the information on the police website is accurate, then I ask you why my cat was impounded as a stray or for running at large. If the info on the website is inaccurate, then the citizens of the city are not being properly advised what the law is regarding cats in the city. To me, it is fundamentally unfair to lead cat owners to believe that their cats may run free, including off of the owner's property, when in fact the city or the police in practice are impounding cats for running at large or as strays. Second, the city's animal control ordinance, which I think is Article 93, on its face authorizes only the impounding of dogs as strays or for running at large, and maybe chickens, I'm not sure about that. Conversely, the ordinance does not authorize the city to impound a cat as a stray or for running at large. State law is similar in that it provides that dogs only may be impounded as strays or for running at large, and only then pursuant to the state statute and a licensing law for dogs adopted by the municipality. I do agree that the state law allows cats to be impounded for having rabies, but that's not the issue here. With all respect intended, our government's powers are limited to what the law or the state constitution provides to the government in way of power. Here, the city is not authorized legally, in my opinion, under current state law and municipal ordinance to impound cats as strays or for running at large. If the city wants to do so, or in fact is doing so as a matter of practice, then it should modify its animal ordinance to provide for such. Amending the ordinance would likewise serve to put cat owners on notice that their cat may not go off of their property without the possibility of being seized and impounded by the city and its ACO. Third, and as mentioned, the city has no licensing law for cats. The purposes of a licensing law for animals, in my view, include: one, assuring the city knows which animals reside in the city and that they are properly vaccinated. Informing animal owners of the need to vaccinate. Informing animal owners of conduct by their animals that is violative of city law. Putting animal owners on notice for penalties for violations of the ordinance or related city law, including monetary penalties or penalties involving seizure and impounding of animals. Requiring that licensed animals be identifiable in some fashion, including so the city can provide notice to the owner of the seizure of the animal, and providing the city with a database maintainable by and available to the city so it can provide such notice to the owners of seized animals. All of these things are absent given the lack of a licensing law for cats in Nashua. If the city is going to seize any animal, including cats or ferrets, for running at large or as strays, they should first license those animals, including so the city has a way to allow the seized animal's owner to retrieve their pet. Fourth and finally, the lack of a licensing law for cats and the mechanism and the associated mechanism for identifying cats so owners can be advised of their seizure poses the potential that the city will seize an animal and deprive its owner of possession of an animal in a way that violates the owner's due process rights under the 14th Amendment to the federal Constitution. Animals are personal property under New Hampshire law. The federal Constitution requires several things when a citizen's property is seized by the government. One is that the owner of the property must be properly informed prior to the seizure that the law permits seizure of the property, in this case an animal, under certain circumstances and what those circumstances are. Once a seizure of personal property occurs, the governmental entity which seized the property must notify the owner of the seizure and must provide some mechanism whereby the owner can at least attempt to retrieve their cat from the government. At minimum, the lack of a licensing law for cats means the city has no way to identify the cat that's been seized, so the city is unable to provide notice to the owner of the seizure and the opportunity to recover the cat from the city. Based on all of this, I submit that the city's action in impounding cats as strays or for running at large exceeds and is beyond the city's legal authority as provided by existing law. Such practice or conduct is also unconstitutional or potentially so, in my view, because depriving the cat without a license fails to allow the city to identify the owner and give that owner notice of the loss of their personal property. In fact, RSA 466:13A expressly provides that municipalities may license cats, and if they do, the same penalties can be applied to cats as are applied to dogs. Such penalties would presumably include seizing and impounding a cat as a stray or for running at large if they stray from their owner's properties. If the city wants to regulate cats as they do dogs, then the city is free to create a program for licensing and to modify its animal control ordinance to include specific and express restrictions on licensing cats and for imposing penalties for violations of those restrictions. As I said in my letters, I tried to fix this issue by meeting and speaking with the city at the time my cat was seized and impounded in 2017. I had thought I had resolved this issue quietly and privately. At the time in 2017, I was assured by corporate counsel that it was not the practice of the police to impound cats as strays and that the situation involving my cat was an aberration. I was promised that the police would never do this to my cat again. I accepted those representations. I also convinced the city to change the then existing contract with the Humane Society, to remove language from the contract regarding impounding cats and ferrets as strays at the Humane Society. The revised contract without language about impounding cats and ferrets is dated December 7, 2017. The city agreed to and did in fact remove such language, but inexplicably reinserted the language into the contract when the contract came up for renewal in July of 2018. I've asked the mayor and corporate counsel for months now why the 2018 contract reverted to the old contract language. I never received an answer, Mr. Mayor, and instead I feel I've been stonewalled by you and Mr. Bolton. I've come to the Finance Committee because you are the appropriations arm of the government and must approve the currently proposed contract with the Humane Society. Once again, the mayor has included language in the proposed contract before you regarding the impoundment of cats and ferrets as strays. As I've noted, impounding cats and ferrets as strays or for running at large under current state and city law is illegal, as well as unconstitutional when applied. Since the city is not legally authorized to seize and impound cats as strays or for running at large, the city may not enter into a contract with a third party to carry out such illegal or unconstitutional purposes or actions. The committee should therefore reject the current contract as structured. The contract could be approved by the committee by simply removing or striking the language in Section 1 of the proposed contract regarding impounding cats and ferrets as strays. The committee should also use its power to reject the contract as currently proposed as a check and balance on the mayor and his administration. The mayor and the city, like every other person, an entity in the state and this country, are subject to the rule of law and are prohibited from engaging in illegal acts or unconstitutional acts. And there's a typo here in my thing. Please note, this is important, I am not asking that the committee or the city reduce or otherwise modify the compensation to be paid the Humane Society under the contract for any reason or in any amount. All I'm asking you is not to enter into a contract that has an illegal purpose or basis. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak? Yes, please come forward. And please give your name and address.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mayor, Alderman, my name is Dr. Stephanie Wolf Rosenblum, and I reside at 47 Berkeley Street in Nashua. And I am here as a member of the Board of Health. And I am not in a position to speak to the legal issues surrounding what the gentleman spoke to. I also am not familiar with what's on the website or what the communication is. However, as the aldermen consider what is appropriate, I would like to bring to attention several things. One is that cats do represent a mode of transmission of infections. People think of rabies, and cats and other animals that are permitted to ambulate at large are at risk of contracting rabies. There is a law that animals must be vaccinated, and when they are vaccinated, it takes about 1 month for that vaccination to take effect. So it is certainly relevant to, and in the interests of those that protect the health of our citizens, to be aware of whether or not a cat is under the ownership of someone who obviously cares a great deal about their animals and has vaccinated them for their own protection as well as the protection of citizens. Another common infection that is attributed to transmission by cats is something called toxoplasmosis. It's a parasite, and one of the things about toxoplasmosis, unlike rabies, which results in odd behavior of an animal, so you would suspect that there's a problem, a cat, amongst other vectors, can carry toxoplasmosis without itself having any symptoms. Toxoplasmosis can cause eye problems, including blindness, and it's particularly dangerous for pregnant women. If a pregnant woman were to contract toxoplasmosis, even though they themselves might not get an infection, it can lead to congenital defects and deformities in a fetus that can lead to lifelong problems. And lastly, I would say that while there are many more bites and scratches in humans due to dogs than there are to cats, unlike the 10 to 15% infection rate if somebody is scratched or bitten by a dog, the infection rate when somebody is scratched or bitten by a cat is approximately 50%. This is not only a risk for citizens, but also for those that are trying to take control of animals. As a matter of fact, the Humane Society recently acquired a special tool to humanely but safely be able to scan animals for chips so that their owners could be identified if they happen to have lost their collar or identification. And so, in summary, I'm certainly happy to answer questions. I would just ask that in considering what happens in the city of Nashua with animals that have either behaviors or lack of identification that could reassure one that they have been properly vaccinated and are properly cared for, that this must be taken into consideration for the health and safety of our citizens as well as the health and safety of our staff. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from the public wish to speak to the committee? If not, we'll go on to communications. Why don't we take Mr. Braun's communication first? Is there a motion to suspend the rules for the acceptance of a communication received on July 10th, 2019, after the agenda was prepared? Alderman O'Brien? Motion has been made, and the motion is to accept this communication. All those in favor, and place it on the record, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We'll return to the regular order of the agenda. Alderwoman Kelly.
Communication from Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding contract with Sapphire Digital for Smart Shopper. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and contingent upon Board of Alderman approval, award the contract to Sapphire Digital. Source of funding is Department 113, Benefits Self-Insurance Fund.
Is there anyone here to discuss this? Yes, Mr. Budrow, why don't you come forward? Why don't you give us an explanation, and then we'll take questions.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Alderman, members of the Finance Committee. I'm Larry Budrow, the Director of Human Resources. Smart Shopper is a program run by Digital Sapphire. It's a for-profit company. It has been working in conjunction with Anthem, our health insurance carrier, for about a decade. And they have developed the program, which has been in place in the state of New Hampshire and the city of Manchester for a number of years, and more recently used by Health Trust, which is the risk pool that most smaller New Hampshire municipalities belong to for their health insurance. Smart Shopper is a program that incentivizes members of the health plan to shop when they have to have anyone from a list of 50 procedures. So, for example, an x-ray. someone goes to the and this is how it works. I'll give a quick explanation. You go to the doctor says, I'm not sure if your foot's broken, you should have your foot x-rayed. And you could do it at the practice which is associated with my doctor's office, or you could do it anywhere else. And so the patient is encouraged by this program not to make an immediate appointment, but rather to access the Smart Shopper program either by telephone or on the internet. And when they do that, what they'll see is they'll put in their zip code, and there'll be a number of places that can x-ray your foot, all of which are existing, well-qualified places that x-ray feet, and that Anthem has claims history for years and years. And so the place that the doctor recommended may cost $400 for the x-ray, and somewhere other place may cost $200. And if you choose to go to the place that costs $200, you'll get a fee. The employee or the member receiving the service, dependents over 18 are included in this, will get a check for $25 about a month and a half later after it's evidenced that you accessed the program and had the x-ray at the less expensive provider. In general, the reason that we endorse this program and that many others are endorsing this program is that there is a belief that one of the prongs of trying to not necessarily reduce healthcare costs, although that would be a great goal, but rather more realistically to slow the pace of growth, is to get people involved in to behave as consumers for some of their healthcare needs. And generally, we don't. This country's move towards HMOs years ago just took kind of people out of that decision-making mode. And this is a program designed specifically to get people involved in shopping. The reason that we are here before the Finance Committee and the Board of Aldermen is a little unusual because there's no existing outlay of money. We're not signing up to spend a fixed or an identifiable amount of money. We are signing up for a program that, let me just finish my explanation, I'm sorry. So if the $400 that one provider was going to charge, the $200 that the chosen provider charged, there is ostensibly a $200 savings. The contract with Smart Shopper is going to allow Smart Shopper to retain 30% of that savings, and the city to retain, to enjoy the benefit of that balance of $140 savings. That's the program. That's how it works.
Alderwoman Clee.
Thank you. Number one is anything that lets me go shopping, I love it. But putting that aside, with this in the long run, I mean, one of the biggest hits to our budget this year was the cost of healthcare. We could have kept it down to 1.6 budget increase, but because of the cost of healthcare, will this help in any way reduce future healthcare costs? Or when you keep talking about the savings, is this an actual savings in our healthcare cost, or
This,
does the city realize the savings, I guess, is what I'm looking.
so more realistically than ever seeing healthcare costs go down from one year to the next. That's from everything I've read and everyone I've talked to, that's unlikely. Health insurance is likely to escalate at a rate above inflation for the foreseeable future. However, anything that we can do to slow that cost increase is beneficial to the city and to the budget. So the direct answer is no, I don't think it will reduce the budget, but I think it will slow the climb. The city of Manchester has been at this since 2010. They're realizing about $400,000 to $500,000 of savings now on a slightly smaller population than we have. So that's the order of magnitude. The healthcare spend is going to be around $40 million this year. We're talking about the possibility of, in several years, saving $500,000 or $1 million. So it's it's not going to be earth-shattering, but it's certainly my premise that every little approach that we can take to minimize increases, we should take advantage of.
That's the speech I give for taxes, so yes.
Well, I consider $500,000 or $1 million to be quite a bit of money, but Alderwoman Gathright, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. My question is, have you spoke to any of the employees about this SMART program? That they
Yes.
seem to want to take the opportunity to search for medical care themselves?
Yes.
Really?
And we, in fact, we know anecdotally that we had particularly members of the school district, teachers in particular. I understand that teachers sometimes almost wait until the end of the school year to have elective medical procedures done. And so we know that we had people on the Smart Shopper website before it was actually open to us, so that they were able to take advantage of this program immediately on July 1st.
Thank you.
Alderman O'Brien.
Is this a totally elective type of program, or is it going to become mandatory for our employees to do the Smart Shopper?
It's totally elective now, and I would anticipate that it would be. No one has suggested otherwise.
Okay. And follow up, if I may. We have several labor unions out there that write contracts with the city, and I know healthcare is part of the contractual agreement. And I know Alderman Gathright did ask the employees, but as far as those under current labor agreements, and what was the feeling of the labor unions with this particular program?
We didn't seek the union's opinion specifically, but most of the employees who attended our open enrollment meeting sessions were members of unions. And because of its elective nature and the fact that they can earn money from it, they're going to still have to have that, plus they can get some money. I would anticipate no reason for them to be displeased.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. I realize you're not a expert in the Smart Shopper app, but I was just wondering about ease of use. I think that would be key to whether or not people do this.
Before I get to ease of use of the app, they have a well-staffed, short wait time call center. So, and they promote that. They suggest that anyone who isn't immediately comfortable with either the website application or the app can call and get a personal service which extends just beyond picking the place. They'll actually work, and while you're on the phone, work with you to try to get an appointment. So you can always just call, which most people should be comfortable with. And the app, we've been looking at it ourselves for a while now. And it seems pretty straightforward, and I think usable for many of our employees and their dependents.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Alderman Laws.
I was just curious if Smart Shopper is unique in the market for the service they provide, or if there are several carriers that you could choose from.
Well, I don't know the real answer to that question, Alderman, because, throughout the country, there may be others. For us, this is sort of a captive-only option because they are embedded with Anthem and have been since their inception. They started in the city and the state. Those were the two pilot operations about a decade ago. And so there's a Smart Shopper has access to Anthem's claims data. That's how they're arriving at what the cost structure should be. So in this neck of the woods, there aren't other options that we could have chosen.
Thank you.
All right, anything further? Any questions, comments? All right, the motion is to approve the contract. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. Good night.
Now, the next item is the Humane Society contract, which Mr. Braun spoke about. Just my recollection is that we did amend this contract in December of, as Mr. Bronis said, in December of 2017 as a result of, in the middle of the contract cycle, as a result of the issues brought forth by him. And we came through with a contract amendment, and the contract was amended to exclude cats. Then, I think what happened is when the contract came up for renewal, now there's two versions of the contract out there. When the contract came up for renewal a year ago, the version that was proposed was the older version, not the newer version. And I don't think anyone really realized or thought about the fact that these words had not been changed in a new version. So the old version got approved, which includes the cats. Then there was litigation began. So there's currently a pending court case, and in the intervening months, I think the legal department has taken somewhat of a different position than it did before, and we've had the Board of Health weigh in on the subject. So what might make sense is for us to hold the contract, bring legal in and get their take on this, and act with the knowledge of what their advice on not only the contract but the litigation is. Alderwoman Clee.
In truth, that I agree with that. I was actually, although I don't think that this contract is unconstitutional, I do think that the NRO 90, of course, I don't have it in front of me right now, but the one that talks to to this, it's titled basically, the NRO 93.6 is specifically titled Impoundment of Dogs, Cats, Ferrets, and Chickens. And I believe that there's an implied intention of being able to seize cats and ferrets as well as it. But the items listed underneath it specifically talk to dogs and chickens. It doesn't specifically talk to cats and ferrets. And I have spoken to legal about getting that changed, having an item put in under there. I also want to talk to the licensing of cats. If we license cats, we would probably need 2+ people downstairs, and it would be a nightmare. And I talked to the state about this, and the state has legally said that we can license them. There is a 436, which is an RSA, that talks to cats with suspected rabies, and much like what Dr. excuse me, Dr. Stephanie Wolf Rosenblum had spoke to, cats transmit saliva and so on their fur, and they can have disease that we don't know about. The idea of licensing a cat and having it hang down, where cats get in and out of everything like that, we create a health issue for them. So that becomes an issue. So do we require that they be chipped? Do we require this and so on? The current 436 says that all cats by the age of 3 months old must get a rabies shot. They don't have to show proof of it unless the cat is picked up. So because of all of these things, it literally becomes a logistical nightmare to try to license them from municipalities. There has been one city, and offhand I can't recollect which one it was, that did it and then pulled back and said they weren't going to license anymore because it became an absolute nightmare. But they still have on their books that they will pick up cats that are strays or nuisance or so on. So I think we do have the legitimate right to do it, but I think our regulation is not, there's lack of clarity in it. So I've asked that we get that language in there. So I would like to see this tabled or held off until legal can take that and then we can put it through as
So, well,
such.
obviously, you've looked into this in some detail.
Oh, yes, I have.
So you're suggesting what, that we bring legal in at the next meeting or something?
I think we should bring legal in, and in the meantime, also, for the next Board of Aldermen, I'm hoping that we have an ordinance update that will have the language of being able to, that cats and ferrets will fall under that particular category of 93, NRO 93-6, that will, there's an ABC, which talks about cats, and a D that talks about chickens. We're going to have an E that will talk about cats and ferrets also, picking them up.
So in essence, this is a motion to hold in committee and
Yes.
invite legal to come to the committee
Yes,
at the next
I
meeting.
think so.
Any other discussion? Alderwoman Kelly.
Alderman Clee brought up my concern was whether or not we need to add chickens to this contract, because they're not under impoundment or anything, but I know they are in that NRO, so I think we should table as well.
Yeah.
Alderman O'Brien.
What is going to happen in the interim while we wait? Is there a terminus on this, or is there a green clause, evergreen clause, or anything with this?
Well, I think we just tell the Humane Society that, this isn't being held up because of any issues with them, and that we are intending to renew the contract. The only issue is whether what we do with the language pertaining to cats and ferrets. So I think they'll be okay with that.
Okay.
Alderwoman
I
Clee.
did speak to legal about that, and we have gone as late as September, pushing these contracts off in the past. So this is not a brand-new precedence that we're setting. We have done it in the past.
Follow up, if I may.
Alderman
Uh,
O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just basically a statement. What happened to Mr. Braun's cat, and those of us that do love animals, as myself, I can understand, but at the same time, we have to protect the citizenry. And if you do have an animal that is a stray that comes onto your property, and you know what animals do on other people's properties, and there has to be a system that the taxpayer can have a venting and an agency that they can contact and everything. So as long as we can keep the status quo, I am content, and we can wait and peel the covers off of this and get into it deeper, which I think would be good. Thank you.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes, I'd like to suggest, for expediency's sake, that perhaps Alderman Clee and I work with legal to come to that meeting with language instead of trying to work it out in that meeting.
Sounds good. All right, any other discussion? So the motion is to hold in committee. Alderwoman Clee and Alderwoman Kelly will communicate with legal about that meeting and about potential amendment to language in the current ordinances. If there's no other discussion, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and the matter is tabled to the next meeting. Alderwoman Kelly.
Communication from Dan Kuchen, Purchasing Manager, regarding purchase of various chemicals for the wastewater treatment facility. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and authorize the purchase from Polydyne, Borden and Remington, and PVS Chemical Solutions. Source of funding is Department 169 wastewater.
Mr. Boucher is here. Come on up, please. I mean, the purpose here is pretty self-evident, but maybe you want to
Okay, thank you.
give us a little more substance.
All right, David Boucher, wastewater superintendent. These are 3 chemicals that we add to our process daily throughout the year. So this is the purchase for chemicals to last the fiscal year 20. One's a polymer that we use in our process to bind sludge, which assists in us removing the water before it's taken off site. The other one's a sodium hypochlorite, which is a disinfectant that we add to the treated water before it goes to the river. And the sodium bisulfite, it takes the chlorine back out of the water before we send it to the river, so we don't add chlorine to the river. The sodium hypochlorite and the sodium bisulfite are purchased through a consortium. So there's a bunch of companies that bid, and we take the lowest bidder. Unfortunately, the polymer, there's no 2 polymers are alike, so we have companies come in and test them with our sludge, and the one that works the best in our facility is the one we go with. So,
Discussion, questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Alderwoman Kelly.
Communication from Dan Kuchen, Purchasing Manager, regarding FY20 purchase of trash and recycling toters. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and authorize the purchase from Toter Inc. in the amount of $145,000. Funds are available in Department 168, Solid Waste.
Mr. LaFleur is superintendent over at the landfill. This is
sir.
pretty self-evident as well, but How many toters are represented by $145,000?
The, it's hard to say with the fluctuation of prices in the markets. It's plastic, so it goes along with the fuel prices. I usually go for it's my annual purchase of $145,000. I go for the approvals for this. I don't spend the whole $145,000 if not needed. I usually keep a stock of about 1,000 recycling carts on hand, and then probably about 1,000 to 1,500 trash carts. So once we start depleting those levels, I replace them as needed. The reason why we keep the price the same is our toters right now, our trash ones were purchased in 2003. They're 16 years old. They had a life expectancy of 10 years. We've over exceeded that. So we're expecting some kind of an influx of damaged carts here happening soon. They were warranted for 10 years. Like, again, we did go over that. So we did really well with what we have.
Discussion, Alderwoman Karen.
Oh, yes, thank you. So if someone wanted a new toter or recycling bin, how would they get that?
The recycling carts, they contact the solid waste department, or they can come in right to the scale house. It's a $60 purchase for that. Recycling carts, if it's, for trash carts, if it's damaged by our employees or a city truck or an employee, we replace that. If it's noticeably done by the resident for any number of reasons, they'd have to replace it themselves.
And what's the fee for that?
I'd have to look. I think it's $51 right now.
So they have to bring it to the solid waste?
We could deliver it and pick it up.
Okay, thank you.
Alderwoman Kelly.
My question was along the same lines. If you purchase a recycling toter and then it gets damaged, do you have to repurchase it?
It's on a case-by-case issue. If it's done by the resident, of course, they have to take care of it. They're buying it, they're owning it, it's their cart. They can do with what they want with it. So,
Can I follow up, please?
Yes.
Do we know if we have plans to make them not cost the residents at some point?
with the way the recycling markets are right now, probably not.
Okay, thank you.
Alderwoman Clee.
It falls on what Alderwoman Kelly had said. So if the damage was created by a faulty truck or something like that, or if it got put down, and I guess it may not necessarily be your staff's fault. Sometimes they fall. When you put them down, they fall, and a car hits them. I've seen that happen. Would you then replace it if it happened in the street, or is that the case-by-case kind of?
It's a case-by-case issue.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't
Because
want
I have seen that happen.
Yeah,
It kinda went, "Ugh."
absolutely. On a windy day, if
Yeah.
the cart isn't picked up and put away properly
Or
right
even
away,
the
the
minute
wind
they
could
put
blow
it
it out
down,
into the street.
sometimes it blows, yeah.
I mean, we have to look at that. I want to be fiscally responsible for the city also, and not just be handing them away like candy.
I just, for the public at large that are listening, I don't want them to think that if, for some reason, it gets put down and rolls and happens like that, that they're going to necessarily always be held responsible for
We
it. So,
will send someone out to investigate it and
Okay.
see what we can do.
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright.
Do we still have the smaller green barrels, the old ones?
We don't purchase those anymore. We're staying with 96-gallon barrels all together right now for commonality. So I only have to buy one set of lids, one set of wheels. We're doing away with all the little ones. So as they come in, if they're damaged or destroyed, that's it. They go with the bigger barrel. It's just it's an easier operationally. It's easier for my department to handle.
Follow up. So, if you have the smaller ones, you can still use it. It's okay.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And if they want to switch that in, we are trading them in. So we'll take the little one back and give them a bigger barrel.
Okay. So I was thinking about some of the elderly people that you really don't need those huge barrels,
Yep.
And
Yeah,
but I
that-
guess they could hold it waste
They,
for
yeah, exactly.
3-4 weeks.
I was
huh?
just going to say that they can wait 3 or 4 weeks before they have to put it out once instead of putting it out every week.
Okay, thank you.
Alderwoman Kelly.
I bet you didn't expect this many questions on
No, I
recycling
didn't.
toters.
Which is fine.
Getting a little geeky. I'm interested in whether you plan for development that's going around in the city in terms of new houses that are coming on the market. I know we have quite a few because I'm on Conservation Commission. I see them all the time. So do you ever plan for that?
Playing as far as
those new residents are going to need those bins. So
oh yeah, that's why I keep so
that's
many
why
in
you keep-
stock.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great,
absolutely.
thanks.
All right. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
Communication from Dan Kuchen, Purchasing Manager, regarding purchase of Caterpillar 826K compactor teeth. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to Karen Compactor Company in the amount of $34,250. Source of funding is Department 168, Solid Waste.
Mr. LaFleur?
Sure. Superintendent Jeff LaFleur, Solid Waste. These teeth are for the compactor, our big trash compactor, the one with the steel wheels and the big teeth on them. That's what crushes our trash and compacts it properly. We weren't really planning on purchasing teeth for these wheels this year or next year. We were hoping to get a few more years out of them. But Karen Compactor, they're the sole source. Those are the wheels that we bought for the compactor. They actually negotiated with us, and they gave us a set for 2 wheels free last year. I negotiated that with them for them wearing down so quickly. So I had those installed last fall, ahead of this, before I could get this under my budget for this installation. So I ended up negotiating, getting 2 for free. They're charging us $34,250 for 2 wheels now. So that's typically it'd be a $60,000-$70,000 purchase. We're getting it for $34,000. That's just the teeth. Cat out of Londonderry will be welding and installing them for us for a charge of only $10,000, which is very cheap. We had a fabricator do it, and it took him 2.5 weeks to do the 2 wheels. Cat's telling me they can do it in 3 days, so that'll be that's another added addition to this, but this is what we're going for the approval for right now.
Discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Communication from Dan Kuchen, Purchasing Manager, regarding contract for Canal Street Bridge repairs to abutment. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to William P. Davis Excavation in the amount of $39,905. Funds are available in Department 160, Administration, Engineering, Capital Improvements.
Good evening, Mayor, committee members. My name is Pete Cahalmi. I'm the Deputy City Engineer. The Canal Street Bridge has sustained some damage. We call it spalling. Spalling is essentially chunks of concrete that has broken off the surface of the abutment. And generally that's caused by water infiltrating the concrete, freezing, expanding, and then pushing the concrete out of place. So we have proposing a relatively moderate repair to drill some holes into the abutment to allow the water to escape and stop the spalling from occurring. And then later on, we do plan on making concrete repairs to the abutment. The Davis Excavation from Hampton has performed a couple of other contracts with DPW. They've done a good job for us, and we recommend accepting their bid.
Alderman Laws.
How concerned are we about the integrity of the bridge while this is going on?
It's the bridge is getting old. I believe it's 70, 80 years old, something like that. But it's not in danger of anything catastrophic happening anytime soon.
Follow up? Thank you. How many other bridges around Nashua are we going to be doing projects like this on?
The Main Street Bridge will need some work. I'm not intimately familiar with each bridge, but I know the Main Street Bridge will need some work, as well as the Hudson Bridge over the Merrimack.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright.
I was just gonna ask, what's considered the Main Street Bridge? Is that the bridge right down here by Canal Street?
Yes,
Okay.
going, over the Nashua River.
Right.
Right by Peddlers there.
Okay.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes, I was wondering if you know how long this might extend the useful life of the bridge. It sounds like it's coming to its end by what you said before.
I really don't have a good answer for that. This is phase one of 2 or 3 phase project. First, we need to keep the spalling from getting worse, and then we need to start making repairs to the concrete. I don't foresee anything, this bridge needing major repairs for quite some time. Right now, it's in okay shape.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Alderwoman Karen.
Yeah, thank you. So when this repair work is being done, is that bridge going to be closed, or is it going to be one lane?
It's not gonna be closed. The work is underneath the bridge. There may be some sporadic one-way alternating traffic.
Okay.
But no, it's not gonna be closed.
Good, thank you.
Alderman O'Brien.
A little off subject, but the same bridge. How's the lighting on the bridge? Was that ever, I remember there was talk in the past of the torch lighting that's quite elaborate. You can never replace that, you know. Is it working?
I can't speak to that, Alderman. I'm not
Yeah.
not aware of the lighting on it.
Anything else? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Unfinished business, none. New business, none. Record of expenditures.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the Finance Committee has complied with the city charter and ordinances pertaining to the record of expenditures for the period from June 14th, 2019 to June 30th, 2019.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. General discussion. Any general discussion? Public comment. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak to the committee? I don't believe so, because there's no one here. Remarks by Alderman. I don't see any. Alderman O'Brien.
A motion to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the meeting of the Finance Committee is adjourned at 7:53 PM.